Live from New York City, it's the Gary Null Show. And now, your host, Gary Null.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Null. Nice to have you with us today. Virtually every day, I begin the program with the latest on health and healing. However, today, we're having an exception to that rule. Why? Because of all of the injuries and deaths, all of the suffering that has occurred around the world, where people were told that they may have COVID, do have COVID, that we're all equally risk. If you're a teenager or you're 85 years old, Anthony Fauci said we're all at the same risk of being sick, going to the hospital, or even dying. As a result, a group of draconian rules were put into place. Most people followed those. In fact, the vast majority of Americans were vaccinated multiple times, and many people, such as people working in governmental agencies and athletes, senior citizens, had multiple boosters. We were told that for each booster, you would be protected. Now we're finding out that we should have been more diligent. We should have taken our time. We should have taken between 5 to 10 years, as the normal vaccine safety and efficacy trials take, to be able to determine that indeed the RNA vaccines were safe and effective. The government has not voluntarily given this information. To the contrary, every effort to find out the truth of what did they know when they released the vaccines as far as efficacy and safety has been thwarted. It is only because of Freedom of Information Act request where a judge has said you must turn over the safety data. For example, from the FDA. But the 5,000-pound gorilla in the room is not the FDA, it's the CDC. After all, they're the ones who greenlight all of the vaccines. They frequently create the vaccines. They own patents on dozens of vaccines. They profit from it. Most of the money comes from the vaccine or pharmaceutical industry. As of today, a brand new report that was obtained through Epoch Times reporting, and we commend them for the reporting and their diligence in the legal effort, it's released. I have said from the beginning, whether you vaccinate or not, it's your choice. I'll support you either way. If you get vaccinated and if you should have a side effect, whatever we can do to help you, we will. I just completed a 10.5-hour webinar, to my knowledge, the longest ever done, nonstop, with the world's leading experts on COVID and its effects and how to help people overcome those, overcoming long COVID, overcoming side effects that right now are not being helped at all. There's over 1 million Americans suffering from side effects. First, their plight was denied. Then they were told this had nothing to do with the vaccines. Then they were said, okay, it may have to do with the vaccines, but there's nothing we can do because the technology that created that vaccine, the technology that these doctors were never trained in, is creating side effects in ways that they've never seen before. And then we have all the excess mortality rates around the world, and especially in countries that had the most vaccines. It works this way. The countries in the world that gave its population the most vaccines have reported the highest adverse effects and deaths, especially deaths. But it's not just the government. It is the insurance industries that are proving through actuary statistics that if you took the vaccines, you have a greater chance of dying, especially if you're 60 years old and under. People who normally are not at risk of dying. And especially people in their 20s and 30s who don't have any, let's say, they don't have any comorbidities and they're dying. Why? Well, these are now under a brand new title that we've never seen before in world history of unknown origin. So we have all these people dying. They're proven to have died because their families were paid their life insurance payout. But then why did they die? They shouldn't be dying. If we normally have, let's say, 1.8 million Americans dying each year from all causes, and suddenly you are up to 2.3 million Americans dying or 2.4 million Americans dying, and yet we don't know why they're dying. And so this has never happened before, this anomaly. But then there's a lot of scientists and physicians saying, we know why they're dying because we did the statistics. The epidemiologists looked at all the deaths from 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, and suddenly that's when these excess deaths occurred in 21. What happened in 21? The vaccines. And so you see this huge spike in deaths. Now, these are actual statistics. They're not theories, they're not conspiracy theories. So now everyone is trying to cover themselves saying, well, we don't know that. Yeah, we do know that. And but then they finally had just today released the actual analysis. I'm going to quote now from the Varus report. And this is what we've been told all along. And remember, I told you over 6 months ago that they had to reveal in the actual study before you got your vaccine, they did these clinical studies. And they had a little group of side effects. You had to check one of them or two of them. For example, if you had redness or pain in your deltoid muscle right here, where you got the injection, well, that was a side effect. Okay, so I got some pain there, so you check that. Or you might have a little dizziness, you check that. But of the different ones they told you, there was only about a dozen or less side effects you could check off. But what if you had Guillain-Barré syndrome? What if you had myocarditis? It wasn't on the list. So you could have side effects that weren't on the list, and therefore they could say to the American public, the media, minor side effects, nothing, transient, overcome it, no problem. Not true. They just never put on the card the vast, vast majority, probably 99% of the side effects you could have and did have, you had no place to mention it. And therefore the government would say, these are the only side effects. I had a little redness. What's the big deal? That was not unintentional, as you will see. They also tried to tell you, and I have the video clip of recently, in fact, just this week, of Anthony Fauci being interviewed in a softball, clearly public relations interview on CBS saying, oh, myocarditis, minor transient. Yeah, it comes and goes, no problem. That's an out-and-out lie. It doesn't come and go. Don't take my word for it. Look in any medical dictionary under myocarditis. It's permanent. In fact, it really shortens your lifespan. And that's why a lot of athletes, 1,700% increase in death. Once again, from 1964 to 2004, they measured deaths. And they found in that about somewhere around a 40 plus year period, there's somewhere between 27 to 37 deaths in the whole world in professional athletes each year. In soccer, which is the largest sport in the world, the most played and watched in the world, the largest audiences, the most athletes, baseball, football, soccer, etc., all were included. And now we had over 800 deaths last year. We've had 1,700% increase in deaths in athletes, and yet they say it has nothing to do with it. Well, then what exactly does it have to do? Why did Fauci suggest they not do autopsies? Not do autopsies. An autopsy will tell you why they died. But now the morticians are telling us why all these unnecessary deaths are happening, because they're seeing it. They're seeing blood clots that are 3 and 6 feet long, made out of some kind of gelatinous material like rubber bands. We've never seen this in world history. And now the people embalming the bodies are saying we can't even embalm the bodies because we can't get the fluid in, the embalming fluid into the body, because we can't get the blood out because these arteries and veins are clogged. So now they began to look. They began to see that these are self-organizing lipid particles that could only have come from the vaccine. I see. So now there's meetings of pathologists, and they're saying this is from the vaccines. So we have unusual deaths, the insurance companies there. We have young athletes dropping dead. The whole world, or everyone watching football saw that this Sunday. And then we have the morticians telling us that these are in the person's body and they didn't feel anything. There's no symptoms. You just drop dead. And then we have suddenly heart problems in top of the world athletes. And now they're retiring. One of the greatest defensive players in history retired this week because of a heart condition. Well, how would he had that? The vaccines. Here's the latest, and this should put to rest. For all of you who are pro-vaccine, fine. We understand. No one's criticizing you for being pro-vaccine. In fact, all the doctors I had on were pro-vaccine, and actually most of them got the vaccine. And only then did they start to do their homework and realize that they had made a mistake and everyone else had too. So this is actual CDC, VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System data. All right? And so this should end this argument once and for all. This is it. The house of cards is collapsed. I'm going to quote to you some material. So it may sound very technical, but it's important you know this because they were forced to release this. Quote, summary. CDC VAERS safety signal and analysis based on reports from December 14, 2020 through July 29, 2022 for RNA COVID vaccines shows clear safety signals for death and a range of highly concerning thromboembolic, cardiac, neurological, hematological, immune system, menstrual adverse events among U.S. adults. Are you ready for this? 770 different types of adverse events that showed safety signals in ages 18 plus, of which over 500, or 2/3, had a larger safety signal than myocarditis and pericarditis. We were never told this. This was hidden from us, and yet they've known it. The CDC analysis shows that the number of serious adverse events reported in less than 2 years from the RNA COVID-19 vaccines is 550% larger than all serious reports for vaccines given to adults in the United States since 2009 combined. So if you took all the vaccine adverse events and deaths from 2009 till COVID, we had a 550% higher rate than that in just this last year. Twice as many RNA COVID vaccine reports were classified as serious compared to all other vaccines given to adults. This means that this meets the CDC definition of a safety signal. There are 96 safety signals for 12 to 17-year-olds. Let me stop there. Right now, there's not a single scientific study in the world that justifies vaccinating any child or baby or anyone else who's young. Not one. This is purely unmitigated greed. They have no science on their side, but they have power on their side. So listen again what the CDC's own report is now revealed, and they were forced to give this. Quote, there are 96 safety signals. A safety signal is a warning, a flash. Stop before you use this and understand what could happen. And that's just between 12 and 17-year-olds, which include, ready? This is what they don't tell you by giving your child a vaccine or vaccinating children in schools or colleges. Quote, myocarditis, that's not temporary, it's permanent. Pericarditis, Bell's palsy, genital ulcerations, high blood pressure, and heart rate, menstrual irregularities, cardiac valve incompetencies, pulmonary embolism, cardiac arrhythmias, thrombosis, pericardial and pleural effusion, appendicitis, perforated appendix, immune thrombocytopenia, chest pain, increased troponin levels, being in intensive care, and having anticoagulant therapy. Now, what if you're a young kid, 5 to 11 years old? Here's what they now have in their official statement. Quote, there are 66 safety signals for 5 to 10-year-olds, which include myocarditis, pericarditis, ventricles of dysfunction and cardiac valve incompetencies, pericardial and pleural effusion, chest pain, appendicitis, appendectomies, Kwashiorkor disease, menstrual irregularities, vitiligo, and vaccine breakthrough infections. The safety signals cannot be dismissed as due to stimulated, exaggerated, fraudulent, or otherwise artificial inflated reporting, nor can they be dismissed due to the huge number of COVID vaccines administered. There are several reasons why, but the simplest one is this. The safety signal analysis does not depend upon the number of reports, but whether or not some are reported at a higher rate for these vaccines than the other non-COVID vaccines. Other reasons are discussed in the full post below. In August of 2022, the CDC told the Epoch Times that the results of their safety signal analysis were generally consistent with the EB, that's empirical Bayesian data mining conducted by the FDA, revealing no additional unexpected safety signals. So either the FDA data's mining was consistent with the CDC's methods, meaning they, quote, generally found the same large number of highly alarming safety signals, or the signals they did find were expected, or they were lying. You may never know, because the FDA has refused to release their data mining results. Now, we want to thank Zachary Steiber at the Epoch Times, who managed to get the CDC to release the results of its vaccine adverse event reporting system safety signaling data for COVID-19 vaccines, and they paint a very alarming picture. And the analysis over various reports for RNA COVID vaccines from the period from the vaccine rollout in December 14th, 2020 through the end of July 2022. The CDC admitted to only having started its safety signaling analysis in March 25th, 2022. Coincidentally, 3 days after, a lawyer at Children's Health Defense Fund wrote to them, reminding them about the Freedom of Information Act request for it. So they should have been doing this from day one. They weren't. Quote, like me, you might be wondering why the CDC waited over 15 months before doing its first safety signal analysis of the vaccine adverse report system, despite having said in a document posted on its website it would begin in early 2021, especially since the VAERS system, the vaccine adverse event reporting system, is touted as our early warning vaccine safety system. You might also wonder how they could insist all the while that the COVID-19 vaccines are being subjected to the most rigorous safety monitoring the world has ever known, and come back and find out that's not true. And then it goes into the background information. And then there's all these charts. We have posted all this on PRN.Live for you. And you'll see it all comes from a Freedom of Information Act request. And by the way, you know, we only had the Freedom of Information Act because of Ralph Nader, and the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, and Clean Food Act, because of Ralph Nader. In fact, over 250 different acts that protect us from unscrupulous industry or governmental agencies came because of Ralph Nader. So, and then they go into what is called proportional reporting ratios, and but the truth has come out. So now, just understand, and I'll just wrap this up now in lay language. From the very beginning, There has not been the rigorous safety testing. There has not been the efficacy testing. They used you and the world's population as their human guinea pigs. I wished that they would have done this, because immediately they would have seen there's way too many side effects and serious side effects, and therefore they shouldn't roll out the vaccines. There were other ways of dealing with COVID, as we now know. And as every major epidemiologist has so stated, that they did everything wrong. Everything was wrong from the very beginning. I was one of the scientists, 75,000 of us, and physicians who signed the Great Barrington Declaration, which was created by a leading epidemiologist, professor from Harvard, from Oxford University in Great Britain, and from Stanford University. And they made it very clear that the approach being taken by Fauci and the National Institutes of Health was wrong. But there was an agenda behind the scenes. And clearly, we did not know then, because we did not have the evidence of the complete complicity of the CIA, the FBI, virtually all the primary platforms, Google, Facebook, in keeping any information out of the public's view that would challenge this. People were to be attacked, in fact, and that's exactly what's happened. In Pacifica land, where I've been for 45 years daily, all of my reports in the very beginning, go back and look at them, over 35 articles written, Richard Gale and myself. We have warned you of the problems. We have given you information on how to build your immune system, how to overcome the comorbidities that make you more vulnerable if you do get COVID. Everything we did, go back and read it for yourself, was 100% accurate, not one single error. Every single thing that Fauci and they have said and done and implemented was wrong, deadly wrong. As a result, we have about 8 million dead people that we didn't have to have die. So I challenged the members of Pacifica and its local boards, who have been adamantly and viciously attacking anyone who doesn't get vaccinated as the enemy. No, unfortunately, you fools, irresponsible as you are, unscientific as you are, completely filled with such hate and contempt towards those who would offer a challenge to the legitimacy of this. You were wrong. Now, ask yourself this: what moral responsibility do you have for promoting attacks against the unvaccinated, trying to erase them, inspiring the woke generation to try to kill these people's profession, and now you're shown that you were wrong on every point? Not one of you will ever apologize. It's not in your character. And that's unfortunate. Nor will anyone in the media apologize, nor will Rachel Maddow go off radio and television altogether, because in my opinion, she does not deserve to be there. But that's something she has to determine for herself. When will you all stop listening to the major media? They lie nonstop. And now we see who motivates them, who tells them what to say, what national programs they have, how they all have the same talking points and use the same words. But when it came to this, the medicines that we could have used on those who got sick early, the most vulnerable, the older, those with comorbidities, could have saved their lives. But they were told no medication, and every doctor was warned, threatened, step down, stay down, do not treat a patient. They want to take an aspirin, all right, but nothing else until they have to go to the emergency room. That was malice aforethought that caused hundreds of thousands of people to die who didn't have to. The doctors who treated immediately, irrespective of the FDA and Fauci's demands, saved tens of thousands of lives. They were gifted and rewarded for saving tens of thousands of American lives by being ostracized, condemned, and losing their license or their board certifications or their employment. They continue to do so. Those were the real heroes, the smartest, most courageous physicians in the world. I had them all on my program on Sunday, helping people. They're still helping people who now want to help themselves overcome their side effects. And we're talking about the most serious side effects. And they're helping them. And with long COVID, they're helping them. And preventing further damage by the spike protein to dissolve or block the spike protein, they're helping them. So the people who did the most at the beginning and saved lives, who've been condemned the worst, are now saving the most lives. What an irony, isn't it? So Pacifica board member, the next time you think about throwing insults and vitriol at someone who's qualified where you're not, who has the truth where you are still supporting Fauci, please take some time and do your homework, because there's more to showing that you have a temper than exhibited in some unbridled self-righteous rage. And for all the people in the media who only had on the air pro-vaccine pundits who all were connected to Fauci or the pharmaceutical industry, shouldn't you now realize that how you were used, how you were complicit, instead of allowing open and honest and civil debate? For the next week, I will be bringing you people, all mainstream, all orthodox, all pro-vaccine, who now are apologizing because they have been awakened and they're seeing the truth. Those are the individuals that you'll be hearing over the next 5 days. As again, I'm apologize for not doing our health nutrition segment today, but I felt this information was more important. So please think before you vaccinate. Please think before you trust anyone. And every time Fauci appears now, remember, this man is the architect, but he is not alone. We now have just learned this week that behind all of this was the Defense Department. Not a single journalist went into there to find this out, but it's out now and it's been proven. We've been played, we've been lied to, we've been used, we've been manipulated. And shouldn't we start to have hearings and bring in Bill Gates and bring in Anthony Fauci, bring in all the people who are so absolutely certain, and let's let them show us the science. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to play you a clip of one of the people who was in that White House, who was brought in, who worked with the National Institutes of Health, and as an expert, a professor in epidemiology. And he will tell you that, I'll just let this out of the bag because you'll see it for yourself. He's interviewed by Dr. Drew. He says that, so I asked Gottlieb as we were going up in an elevator after one of these meetings, could you show me the science on this social distancing, the 6-foot thing where they're drawing circles everywhere in every restaurant and store and supermarket? And he said, kind of Fauci, not Fauci, he laughed. He said, well, we made it up. What do you mean you made it up? Yeah, we just, we made it up. There is no science. We thought, well, should it be 1 foot, 3 foot, 12 foot, 18 foot? And we just decided that let's just make it 6 feet. No science, no studies, no proof, nothing. And that's just one of the ways they lied to us. Remember, people would get in a fight if someone got too close to them in an airport? And yet where we were supposed to stay 6 feet apart, getting your ticket to get on a plane, you sit side by side together. This is insane. This is the worst health fraud in world history. And there's been genocide. This didn't have to happen. But we're going to break it all down piece by piece. And just remember, the next time someone says, don't question Fauci, get your boosters. And I have the actual quote from someone on Pacifica's local station board who was demanding that. And with fire and brimstone, this person was going after anyone, including myself. It's their right to be critical. Fine, but be accurate. All right? And you're not. So just remember, we've been misled. We've been lied to. And it's continuing. There are other ways that will protect you without killing you. And we'll be exploring those as well in upcoming programs. Sorry for this extended introduction to our show today, but now we're going to go to a clip right after our break, going right into it to Dr. Drew, speaking with one of the members, one of the experts who was on the COVID President's Committee, who sat right there in the building and with Fauci and everyone else, and was part of this, but now he's telling us the truth. And boy, is he angry, because he sees that all this suffering didn't have to happen. Back in a moment with Dr. Drew interviewing Professor Alexander. Please stay with us.
Are you tired of closed-minded programming? Well, look no further than PRN.Live, the home for progressive voices.